Hello, this is Phil Bautista with Bull Creek Data. My guest today is Bob Ellington. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Phil. Good to see you again.
Absolutely. I see you got your apparel on. I've got my custom apparel on. I was very impressed, by the way, when I got an opportunity to work with Bob. Bob has some fantastic custom solutions that are data-driven and very useful. One of them is his functional service management application. It's a custom SRM tool. He's also got an auto scheduling tool. And he's also going to be presenting on the ITSM relationships with custom forms that he has. Now, Bob, I've worked in Remedy for many years, as you have, and when I came to work with you, you are the master of guides, filter guides, active link guides, an active link guide calling another active link guide, filter guides calling filter guides, calling filter guides. So I was very impressed. And by the way that you use data to drive your workflow and to implement process is impressive. And when you're dealing with objects that are out in space, orbiting other planets, rocket launches and things, you've got to do maintenance and stuff. You've got a lot of balls in the air, literally a lot of balls in the air. So let's just give a quick overview of the three sessions that you're going to be presenting. Give us a glimpse into what your FSM or your functional service management presentation is going to be about.
Sure thing. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to show some of the custom work, because that some of the things that we run into at events like this is that they end up being sales pitches for predefined tools and so forth. My stuff is not a sales pitch for predefined tools. It's just to present some of the cool things that we've built and some of the solutions that we've come up with on it. So I'm not trying to sell anything with what I'm doing. I'm just trying to show what we did. And if other people take that back and have ideas and build their own concepts similar to what we did, that's what I'm hoping to achieve with this. The functional service management, that was a pretty big project that we put together. And we used the NASA 7120 process, which the 7120 process is laid out by NASA to build rockets, like you said. But they have a variant of it, which is the 7120.99, which is about building software for NASA. And so there's a very structured process for going through communicating to your stakeholders and presenting everything as you go along through the process to get design approvals for what you're going to come up with, all the way down through full testing and then rolling it out to production and everything. The FSM piece, what we ran into is the out-of-the-box SRM tool. While it's got some great capabilities in it, there were a lot of scenarios where NASA wanted to track a whole lot of additional data around a change request that came in. And the other piece was they wanted to treat it more of a project management oriented tool, so that a single FSM, functional service management request, could generate more than one CRQ or work order underneath it and manage it all together. And so we developed a custom tool using that 7120 process to be able to handle that. And that tool has a lot of that functionality in it that you're talking about with the filter guides and so forth. And I go in with this presentation, I'm going to go into that a little bit to show a piece that I developed in there, and I call it custops back there. And the custops is a display-only field that can trigger that a change happened on a record. And so you can have escalations that set a value in that custops, and then it'll go through a guide and say, hey, does custops equal X? Or does custops equal Y? And yes, it equals Y. Go trigger and do some other updates in other forms or other processes, and even turn around and treat it like a function and trigger another change to the custops in that same flow, and continue on and do something else within that same one triggering event in the thing. So That's part of what
And that
FSM
was,
is all
by the
about.
way, in this world of big data, everything is data driven. I mean, that speaks to the value that you provide and the value add of using data to drive process. I mean, process is important, but process that's architecturally bound is limiting, right? So you provide the scalability, which is one of the key tools for application development and deployment, is the scalability and the maintainability of it. And you've addressed the usability of it because it's just a field, and you select a value and you enforce your process. So you have to use the values that are there. You're not worried about typing or misspelling or whatever. So I've been wanting to have you present this for a number of years now since I first saw this. I'm very impressed with that.
Thank you. And yeah, we even use out of box. I call them events, but they're not a real true Remedy event scenario. But we put a lot of effort into categorizing our tasks. And what we do with that is when a task is either triggered or completed, I push data back to that FSM record to say, hey, this task with this categorization has just triggered or it has just completed. And then we trigger that through the custops in order to automate a lot of processes on this. So nobody's having to go manually set those custops. It's all triggered through automation.
Exactly. Well, that's great. I'm looking forward to having folks discover, the value add that you provide with this functional service management application. Tell us a little bit about your auto schedule session here, the quick scheduling of tasks in change in work orders.
So as part of that big functional service management project, one of the requirements that we had was they wanted the ability to schedule the tasks. At the place I work, there are a lot of tasks that end up in a change request. We can end up anywhere from 30 to 60 tasks that are built into the templates. And so for somebody as a change coordinator or a change manager to sit there and manually set all of the scheduled start and scheduled end dates on all of those tasks, which is the way the out of the box is set up to do, is very cumbersome. And it could take you a while to do it. And then you easily get distracted and forget where you are and what date should I put on the next one? These two are simultaneous to each other. What's their start? What's the length of these things? All of that's just a lot of information to try to figure out. So we did some modifications to the out-of-the-box task template to add in a FSM estimated days field so that we can go on every single one of those tasks and say, this one should take 5 days, this one should take 10, this one should take 30, just as a default for that information. And if from that FSM request, you can highlight that CRQ or that work order and click the auto schedule button and say, I want the very first task on this to start on December 1st. And click a button that does auto schedule, and it will loop through all of those tasks using those estimated days and set a scheduled start and scheduled end date on every single one of those tasks for you and show you what the last date is so that you can go to the customer and say, this is when we think this is going to finish.
Well, that provides visibility also to the rest of the teams, because you're not just talking about one particular team. You've got multiple teams that you have to manage, and data. I like to say data. Is it your friend or is it your enemy? Friend or foe kind of thing, right? Because the lack of data can mean you don't have any ability to manage anything, process or what have you. But having too much data or inaccurate data is also, almost as bad. So with what you provided the way to implement process and manage data in an automated fashion that provides the visibility and roll-up to everyone who's involved in this process.
Yes, and as I mentioned before, we went through and categorized all of our tasks. So we have defined that this task happens in the design phase, or this task happens in the transition phase, et cetera, of it. And it's got categorization 1, 2, and 3. So design or transition, that's in category 1, and you get more detailed. And then we have the ability to report on the tasks and say,
Oh, wow.
we have this many things sitting at this point in our process, and they're scheduled to end here or here.
Well, and those metrics and those dashboards that roll that data up, again, provides a visibility, so you can have an instant, at a glance view of where you are in the current process with the current data. I'm looking forward to that presentation as well. Now, you have a third presentation called ITSM Relationships with Custom Forms. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we all know that there is, if you're on an incident, you can go to the relationships tab and you can say, hey, I want to relate a change request to this incident. And it shows up right there in the relationships entry. But we had a lot of data, property data, some additional data that we call the mid form, which is a combination of CMDB and property information that we maintain some extra information from a security standpoint, like what security plan something is on, and those kind of things that we need to track other information about. But if you just go relate a CMDB CI record to an incident, we all know that if you're using Discovery, sometimes Discovery will just suddenly decide to replace that CMDB record. That instance ID won't be there anymore. And so you kind of lose that relationship connection to it. But with our mid record, we're able to relate that mid record to that incident record, and it will stay there no matter what with it. And so what was relevant was figuring out how to build that relationship record, that associations record to the incident or the change, the work order or the problem investigation, and make it present there so that you could double click on it and drill right into that custom form record, or be on that custom form record and relate an incident or a change request to it and have it build the exact same thing. So no matter which direction you build the relationship, you would be able to see it in both places. And it's really a tricky little piece to get all of that done, because there's actual behind the scenes data that you have to put into some of the Remedy forms that you don't generally know about.
That's very powerful. And so, I mean, it's neat how all this ties together. And as you say, I mean, we've all experienced some issues with some discovery data that comes in and gets updated, or I mean, there's the ability to go in to the tool itself and manually, modify some of the data. But by doing this, you've isolated that, and you basically provided if you will, an air-gapped form of your data that you control. That's fantastic. Well, Bob, I'm looking forward to your presentations. And there's one thing that I've learned working with you at NASA that you can't say at NASA, and you can't say it's not rocket science, because it pretty much is always rocket science.
Yeah. And
well, thank you, Bob.
I enjoy it, Phil. Thank you very much for the time.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to your presentations in December in Las Vegas.
All right.
We'll see you there.
We'll see you then. Thank you.